bit like recap from the previous few week or couple weeks, but just grab the points, really grab them, and take whatever you need to away from it, and yeah. So the first one, hold on to the goal of parenting. So remember, the goal from the very beginning is that we're to have kids, and they would continue subduing the earth, ever advancing God's kingdom. That was the goal from the beginning, is that God wanted to have a family, and the only way he was going to do that was through Adam and Eve, to have kids, and have those kids have kids, and have those kids have kids, to the point where we would subdue the earth. And so remember that goal, because we want to have kids, and it's a good thing to keep this legacy going on of man. Sometimes you ever think about it, like the Bible or whatever like that, and the words that are in the Bible, and like how long that just keeps being preserved. Like all the other meaningless stuff falls away. But there's so much like power in what's really going on that God spoke into existence, that it keeps going on. Like I'm going to pass it off to my kids, and if we keep going on and Jesus doesn't come back, there's going to be another generation that keeps carrying it on. Like the Bible is never going to disappear. It's never going to lose its meaning across any generation. And so it's just neat to think about, like, its preservation, and like how people are so dedicated to keeping it. And I don't know, I think about that sometimes. It's just neat. So just know that kids are the greatest joy. In 3 John 1:4, to hear that children are following the truth, gives you true fulfillment as a parent. And that should all be our goal in here. If we're born again, that we would say, man, if my kids would just follow God when they grow up for themselves, not because I say so, but that they actually choose so. Man, what a cool deal. I went to the church baptisms, and there was youngsters in there making declarations that, to being baptized, making their own declarations on that. And I just think that's so cool. And, I'm sure that gives their families fulfillment. One of the guys was in our small group, and you could just see he was a proud dad. He was so proud he wanted to be in there baptizing his son, which was really cool. So,
I was going to say, I think it's a lot more powerful if you raise your children to be able to have the freedom to choose that, because a lot of times when you force it, they'll run from it. So,
yeah. 2 things to never stop doing: never stop pointing them to God,
right,
and then keep praying fervently and continuously that they will go there themselves. I like to say, all the trophies in the world are not going to matter if your kid doesn't succeed in what really counts. They're not going to take any of those trophies with them in the grave. They're going to go on to the other life, and what they did on this life for God is what's really going to matter, and for others. All right, second point: hold on to your time. Number 1 complaint of teenagers: my parents don't spend enough time with them. Now, I don't need to sit here and pull these guys right in the front, but it's probably could be one of their top complaints if I were to ask them. Do you feel your parents spend enough time with you? Most teens would probably say no.
I was going to say, guys, we already taught to budget your money. I think time is another thing that you need to learn to budget. If you value your kids, you will choose to spend time with them.
All right. 40% of teens don't feel they got a close relationship with dad. Once again, we all have the same amount of time. There's 24 hours in a day. But who's going to make the most of it? And I got scripture for that. I'll show you. And I'll come back to it. So Ephesians 5:15-16 says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. And that's really just a game plan for life. Let's make the most of what we have, especially as parents. And so there's a suggestion there. We gave out those game plans last week. Put them somewhere in your house that you're going to run into them once in a while. Put them kind of in front of your face to say, at some point in 2020, I'm going to find out where my kids are in this timeline, and I'm going to hopefully make an impact on wherever they're at.
I was just going to say, choose to have fun with your kids. Mm-hmm. I know for me, I thought that Jesus was a lot more uptight than I think he is now. So have fun, be willing to be silly and have fun with your kids. Enjoy your time with them.
Yep. Third point, hold on to your responsibility. You do have a responsibility as a parent, and you should not take that lightly. We should do our best, like say, to live our lives with integrity. Because, like it says, our kids really do need a real hero, and a real hero is someone that can live in front of them and make good choices despite the circumstances that come up. And like I say, the second point is constantly upgrade your parenting skills. Yes. You can't just say, my kids are growing up, and what I knew from my parents or what I knew last year is going to be good enough to raise them this year. Just read some books on the latest trends on stuff, and you're going to realize, man, I am really not with it in my parenting styles. You may get frustrated over the technology changes and stuff like that, and seeing people on their screens all the time. You can continue being frustrated with it, or you can learn the reasons why they're going there and how you can do to improve connecting with them. You really can. But what I see in my workplace is people just get this huge perception of what that means and then just judge and label and then never choose to connect with them. So you're furthering the divide. So you're not helping things at all.
I was going to say, getting those books, reading stats. Eric shares stats with me all the time. You might find out that you're being a better parent than you think and that your kids are above average. So it'll make it easier to connect with them.
Yep. Psalm 78:72, he cared for them with a true heart and led them with skillful hands. This is talking about God leading the nation of Israel. But you can still see a father's heart here.
Yes. And
you can apply that to your own life. Lead your children with skillful hands. Don't think that, I don't know. You should have a heart that wants to learn the best you can and say, you know what, I want to be a better dad every single year, so I'm going to keep getting tools. I'm going to keep finding out what is going to work best. And the last point, hold on to your mate. This is critical. This is why we taught it first. Colossians 3:19, love your wife and don't treat her harshly. Are your kids seeing that? Are they wondering if you're going to leave the home someday because all they see is arguing? Because I guarantee you there's some insecurities in them if they don't feel that the home is stable. And that's affecting them now in their decisions. And they could turn to substances or something like that because of that. It may not be fully because of that, but it could be a contributing factor. So just know, it's important that we have a good relationship with our spouses. It's huge. And you can see that the second point there, the greatest gift that you can give to your kids is to love their mother. That actually, you doing that in a good and understanding way, like we taught it, is going to actually add to their emotional quotient, which is a far greater determination of future success than even IQ. So you can send your kids off to school and they can be super smart, but if they can't emotionally handle what the world is, and you can see it in youth today, they are the most stressed out generation that's ever been a part of the U.S. A lot of it's to do with cell phones and everything like that, but also a lot of it is there's just some crappy family situations. There's not much dad loving mom at home, and that's producing a large part of what I think that you're seeing. So, a couple quotes. Sign of great parenting is not the child's behavior. So I put this one in here because I wanted to really put the responsibility on the parents. Yeah. And get the focus off the kids. Start focusing on the parents. The sign of truly great parenting is in the parents' behavior. Really, how are they acting? That's going to give you your best success for having better kids. Is how you and your wife are able to handle things. So know that one. And then there's this one. Your greatest contribution to the kingdom of God may not be something you do, but someone you raise. You can do a lot of cool things for God. You can go on trips. You can go minister all over the world if you want. But there might be a lot of ministry in your own home that you're choosing not to do. And that could be your most impactful you ever do in this world. Is seeing to it that the next generation has a great shot at knowing about God, hearing from God, choosing God all their life. You get that opportunity. So at this time, we're going to kind of change it up a little bit from past weeks. We're going to invite our friends up here, Mr. Matt and Mr. Terry, and just want to have a good time and make light of the situation. Try not to be so, I guess, I don't know. I'm not trying to project weight on you as parents. I'm really not, but I am encouraging you to let's do more than we did before. Let's make the most of what we have. Let's look at those videos. There's some inspirational videos out there that you can be like, yep, I can probably pick it up a notch as a parent. Yeah, I'll stand. That's fine. You guys can have seats. And so what we're going to do for the next about 20 minutes is just field some questions. Maybe you got grandparent questions. Maybe you have some parenting questions. And we're going to do our best to give some wisdom where we can.
Yeah, because if you'd asked me 5 years ago to do this, I don't have a clue when it comes to being wisdom about being a parent. So that just goes to show you how much God has put into me so I can put it back into my kids. So,
Yep.
yeah.
So, like I say, there may be a question that we may ask you to rephrase or help us out understand your situation, because you may have some unique situations. Or there may even be a question that none of us feel comfortable that we can answer, and maybe we need to go get some help in that. But we do offer quite a wide range of parenting, from different backgrounds and stuff like that. So,
And I think it's important that if you don't have kids at home, this doesn't just pertain to people that have kids at home. This also pertains to whether you're thinking about having kids or in the future, whether you have kids that are gone and graduated off, you still have to maintain that relationship with them. And if there's ways that if we can give you some insight or some wisdom on reconnecting with your child, even though they're gone away from the house, which I have them at home and they're gone.
that's a good point.
So, if there's anything that we can help you with or whatever, guide you somewhere to get that kind of wisdom, and we for sure can do that.
So Mr. Ron's going to be down there. If any of you can feel comfortable enough to kind of break the floodgates open, there's got to be one question that kind of gets it going, and then people will start feeling comfortable and having ideas about what to ask. So is there anybody in here that could honestly say, hey, we do have someone? There you go. See? Could have never imagined that Steve might have something to ask or say.
Okay, it's an unusual question, I know. But I got a kid that's half a dozen states away. How do you get him to come back home?
How do you get him to come back home? That's a half a dozen states away. How old is this kid?
22.
22. What do you mean when you say come back home?
Visit, not live.
Visit. Okay.
Start by visiting him, maybe.
Yeah. So this is what I had to do, and feel free. I don't mean to take this one. When I wanted a relationship with my dad that I didn't have, I sought it out. I became the bigger person. Because there's a lot of guilt, shame, condemnation, whatever, hurt, a lot of pain that keeps distance from people.
Yeah.
And so if there's a relationship that's a strain, there's a good chance that you may need to be the bigger person in the relationship and be like, hey, I want to be involved in your life. How can I make that happen?
If there's one thing I can say about that is that, we as men, as old as we are, we range from, you guys are 17, 18, all the way up to 60. We've dealt with pride our whole lives. And young teenagers today are full of pride. So if you can't let down your pride for him to show him love and come to him first, it's going to be a struggle all the way, but you're the one that's going to have to bury your pride for him, if that makes sense.
That's good.
That was a good question, though, Steve. I appreciate you asking.
For sure.
You can't be the only one in here that has a question like that. I guarantee that. So, anybody else?
Travis?
Mr. Travis.
So what advice can you give if parents aren't exactly on the same page in parenting styles or religious values?
That should be your number one priority tonight. Is
I
you
would-
and Mama need to get on the same page.
Absolutely. I would suggest listening to teachings together.
Yep.
And see what you can come together on. Come together someplace. You might not have to agree on everything, but come together someplace.
Right. Present the goal. The goal is we want to parent our children the best we can. You can both probably agree on that goal and say, I believe in order to get there, we need to be united in how we parent. And I'm willing to give up ground on things I truly believe in for the sake of what you believe in. But I'm asking that you might be able to do the same. And if you can have that civilly, in a civil way, hopefully maybe you've produced some trust with your spouse recently that you can have that conversation. But it is crucial. Your kids will manipulate the heck out of an uneven home. They just will. Because there's boundaries. They know where to push, where to go over, who to go to. And I don't mean to say this, but it's the parents' fault.
Absolutely.
And so you can gain that back in an instant by just you and your wife saying, we're going to be united front, and I'm going to go check with your dad before we make serious decisions. And if we're not aligned, we're going to say no, And
Travis, what's the biggest thing that you struggle with as far as being on the same page with your wife? What is the biggest struggle? Is it the religion part of it? Is it the disciplinary part of it? Or what is it?
I don't know that I was necessarily speaking for myself,
Okay.
but I felt led to ask.
Okay.
My wife
That's
and I
fine.
are on the
Cool.
same page.
And I'm
parenting.
sorry, I shouldn't assume that either.
okay. Well, then take that as wisdom to take
Yeah.
wherever it's needed, honestly. Anything you want to add, Matt?
Yeah, I think unity in spouses it can't be overstated. You have to have unity. And sometimes that takes humbling yourself and realizing maybe your wife has more wisdom in some area that you do. Man, there's so many times, that I just want to overdo it. I'm over the top sometimes. I'm like, okay, kids, come in here and we're going to all read our Bibles together for an hour, And my wife's like, wait a second, that's not going to exactly make them want to read their Bibles. We need to, have them do some reading, and we'll do some reading. We bounce things off, ideas off each other, and until we're unified in that. But if it's just left up to me, I'd probably honestly have turned all my kids off to Christianity, because I just want to be like, all right, we're going to read your Bible for 3 hours a day and that sort of thing. It's like I got to have unity with my wife, and that comes from what we talked about a few weeks ago, communication. You have to communicate with your wife and have these good communication, good conversations about this sort of thing, not in front of the kids. So when the kids do bring something that you need to be in unity together, you're already there, not trying to decide right at that point.
The other thing I would say, if it's unequally yoked home, in conversation, you don't have to say the Bible says. God's wisdom works whether you put scripture or verse to it or not. If they don't believe in the Bible, come together on just his wisdom, and again, be willing to give up some of yours to come together. I mean, getting a start of that unity is going to be more important than being right all the time. So just find something that you can come together on, because once that's started, it'll gain momentum.
Amen. Great question, Travis.
Yeah.
Great question.
I think a really important thing to consider when you have younger kids at home, and this, I'm basically from my own experience where we are in our life with our two boys. We have two boys at home, 10 and 9. They're about 18 months apart, and I don't know, whoever that guy said that having kids later in life would keep you young, but I'd kick him right in the shins. No, I'm just kidding. But I think structure in their everyday life is such a huge thing. Obviously, cell phones and computers and games they're such a huge part of our kids' society and what they do every single day. I shared last week a little bit about this teaching that I went through with my son Blake, and I tell you, that was probably one of the best experiences for me as a father to go through with him, and just to see his growth and to see I think you mentioned it earlier about how people notice the changes that he went through, even at the age of 10 years old. We started when he was 9, like 9.5, somewhere in there, and we just ended up finishing up here just last month. But it's so awesome to see that when they get it. And it's so important to have structure in your kids' lives to don't let them just go and do whatever they want to do. Give them their free time, obviously, but there's certain things when they come home from school, they know they have to read for 20, 25 minutes. That's a school program. That's a curriculum that they do after school. And then we do Bible studies with our kids. We're doing finishing up a Bible study with our kids with Priscilla Shira. It's called The Quest for Kids. And believe it or not, the way she did this book, she makes it a lot of fun. And our kids, they want to do it every single day. Nice. They want to do it because it's fun. It's sure we're reading out of the Bible. We're getting God's word in the middle of this, but there's always a few exercises and games and stuff that we can play with them to get them excited. And you would think a kid's 9 and 10 years old would not be willing to go sit down at the shut their computers off or their games off to go out and do a Bible study, but they do.
That's good.
And it's just a structure that we have built over the last since they were in kindergarten. Quite honestly, it's that structure that we have had with them. And quite honestly, it's not too late. It is not too late. You can have teenagers. It's about spending time with them. Spend some time with them, and then just throw out those little seeds of what God's done in your life, and to keep that seed planted in them, so that they're able to even get little tidbits off it. I think it's just so important to make sure our kids today have structure.
I think what Terry's saying, it all comes down to being purposeful.
Yeah.
If you just let life happen, it's just going to happen, and it's going to go by, and there's really nothing that's been purposeful about it. You're not going to get the greatest results. Terry's a great example of being purposeful. He's very purposeful with his kids, and all of the stuff he talked about just now, and the stuff he talked about, last week or whenever you were up here about, taking that time to do that with Blake. It's all about being purposeful. This life will just go by and lead you however it wants to lead you, unless you make that decision and are purposeful about it.
Yeah. And Caleb can't wait to do it. He was like, he's waiting. I can't wait to turn 10, just because all this special time that I give to Blake and all the special things that we did together, he can't wait. So he's excited about that, and that's and I'm going to keep going even after, it's not going to stop with just this one thing. It's something that I'm going to keep doing until my kids are ready to leave home.
Right.
Awesome.
And I was going to say, make sure you're meeting them at their level too.
Yeah.
Don't make them read 3 hours.
No.
That's why we have wives.
Just clarifying, this question is not from me, but for some reason, kind of like Travis, I feel like I need to ask this question. There's 2 of you, Terry and Ron particularly, that have some older children, that potentially you didn't make the best choices and the right actions when those children were growing up. Matt's kids are like rock stars. They just grew up in the Brady Bunch home. So, but looking back and having those older young adult and adult relationships with those children now, how do you pursue a relationship with them in the process of healing what you've done in the past?
Good question.
And bringing God into their life in a way that you're not pushing their boundaries, you're respecting them, but you're bringing God into their life.
Well, back when, some of you may not even know, but I had twin daughters when the time I was 19 years old, and I was a single parent at the age of 20, between 20 and 21. I always was a believer in God, but my kids, I never took them to church or anything like that. As they got older, and as Blake and Caleb come along, all of a sudden they started seeing a different side of me, how much I have changed in my later part of my adulthood since I've become to know God. just the changes within me made them curious enough to say, Dad, what is it about you? You're so different. You have changed. And all I could say to them is that God has changed my heart.
I would say the biggest thing is go into that relationship not trying to evangelize, but just gain relationship. I think all too often with estranged kids, we try to get them saved. And what they ultimately need to do is, like Terry said, is to see that change in you. Walk it out. Like, and the key word that you said is pursue, you know. Be intentional, pursue them, because they do want to spend time with you. But the biggest thing I would start that relationship with is humility and say, I wasn't a good parent. I didn't do the best job. I have more tools now, and I'd like to model that out for you and just spend time with them. The biggest thing is making connection. Yeah.
To add to that, one of the advice that I got from a pastor at one time was how to treat your adult children. You don't keep domineering on them, you got to release them. But he said to treat them like a good friend. You know, whether they're wayward, whether they're not. You know, I wouldn't, you know, Raleigh's my friend, and there's things that there's boundaries there that I won't go beyond. And so treat your adult children, don't domineer over them, you know, release them, but treat them as a good friend. You know, and you'll win them over.
Yeah.
But that was good advice.
Nice.
I think real quick, I don't know why I'm just being led to say this, but my wife and I have experienced this, is blended families. With blended families, it's so much different when you have your wife and yourself and your own kids at home. But when you start adding, we had this come up last week, so I just wanted to bring this up for anybody that was, you have a stepson or stepdaughter that's not in the relationship because of your relationship with your wife and your 2 kids or 3 kids or whatever, how many kids you have. I think it's very important to bring it up that if you're struggling with a child that is not in the marriage that is your biological son or daughter, I think it's important to make small steps to get that child back into the picture is to make the connection yourself or have your wife make that connection with that child, just them two, to where that child can feel like they can have that relationship with mom or dad singularly before they just dive into the whole family. And I think it's very important that you try to maintain that relationship with that son or daughter, start that relationship, and then slowly build into the family relationship. So,
I think a couple other things I would say is go to them where they're comfortable. It doesn't need to be grand. If you go to them and you spend 15 minutes with them and it goes good, be happy with it. Call it a win. You know, because a lot of times we go with these big expectations that everything's going to be fixed. You know, that's not it. It's be gradual. You know, another thing that I wrestle with is not sharing knowledge and advice without being asked. Don't push that stuff on them because they've listened to it their whole lives, and it's probably the thing that pushed them out the door anyway. So let them come to you. You know, all you need to do is be a friend with them at this point. You know, build that relationship, and when you're trustworthy again, they'll come to you. Trust me.
Yeah, we taught that, you know, you should move into a consultant role after 18 or whenever they're adults and then leave the home, you know, where they invite you in. They want your information. If they're not doing that, then you have not earned the role of consultant yet.
Yeah. And I was going to say, if you see something that they're doing stupid and you're really having a hard time, say, hey, can I give you some advice? You know, can I? You know, ask permission. If they say no, don't be hurt by it. Just know that's where you're at.
yeah.
Tom had a question. I want to get to that, and then I want to ask one of these young
Before that, I have one thing I want to add to this. I know I have the Brady Bunch family, right? But I wrote down something earlier, and I knew it was going to be useful for some point, and I think it's useful right here. We all will wound our kids at some point. I've wounded every one of my kids at some point. But you can also heal that wound. And it's as simple as sincerely going to them, asking for forgiveness, humbling yourself before your kids. That's something I never saw growing up. A couple years ago, my dad wrote me a letter, and he just basically said in the letter, I know I wasn't the best dad, when you were growing up, but I want you to know that I did the best I could with the tools that I had to work with. And that right there brought healing. I mean, it doesn't have to be some extravagant thing, but be willing to humble yourselves before your kids and own up to your mistakes and let them know that you did the best you could and you want to do better. And don't be afraid to ask your kids, what can I do to be a better dad, to be a better parent? I mean, those can be dangerous questions. Yeah. Be ready for the answers, but be willing to ask them.
And humility on their end has to feel like that you're not coming out, that you're greater than. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but if they feel like you're towering over them, even if your response is like humble in your mind, if you're still projecting the fact that I'm the greater here, I'm the parent, then you really didn't accomplish what your goal was. So, like I say, I've got down on my knees to make sure I got lower than my kid, so he knew I was not trying to hover over him and make him agree to what I'm saying. But he needed to know, like, dude, I messed up and I'm really sorry.
I want to say that is always a good position to be in any time of confrontation. Take a lower position so you're not towering over them. I want to add to what Matt said. Matt said to ask, what can I do to be a better parent? If they give you something that you can't do, be honest with that and say, I'm not there yet, but I will work towards it, because you don't want that disappointment coming back in when you don't meet that need. But, be honest up front and say, that's a great goal. I don't know if I can do that right now, but will you help me work towards that?
I just wanted to comment about being on the same page with your spouse in your parenting. And one trap that I fall into a lot, and I realize it as soon as I do it, when one of my kids will come up and say, hey, do you care if I do this? We want to go do this. No, I don't care, but I got to run it by your mom first. Okay, now if they can't go, guess who's the bad guy? And you're not co-parenting. You're still doing it on your own. So I got to... Yeah, I really got to work on saying, let me check with your mom before I give the answer.
Yep. I'm the bad guy now. All right, just like a couple minutes. I know these guys don't have kids, but I'm just giving you the floor here.
I thought they had 100 of them.
As kids of somebody else, this is a safe place. None of your parents are in here. And you guys need to honor that their parents aren't in here. And it's their story. But if there's something that you could either give us advice as saying, man, I really wish my parent would do this, or that they would know this. Something maybe we haven't taught yet, or just like a conviction, like, man, I really wish I got this from my parent, and this is not calling your parents bad. I'm not highlighting this fact. I'm saying you guys are young, you don't have kids yet, but you can come as a kid and say, I wish I had this right now, or maybe you can ask the question. I'd rather keep it kind of in those guidelines. If you could just
it's
offer
important
some.
to you know that there's not a man in here that probably doesn't already know what you're going to say. So please just be honest about it. It's not going anywhere further than this room, but it's a great reminder for all of us that still have young kids at home.
That's exactly what I'm getting at. I want them to know that this is important to teenagers before they're about ready to head out of the home. What do we need to know, so we can implement?
Yeah, this is a chance that we can actually learn from you.
Yeah,
seriously.
So my parents and I don't agree on religion. They're Jehovah's Witness, and they didn't raise me that way. But obviously, I'm coming here, so I'm not Jehovah's Witness. But it's just really tough for me to be able to go home and have those conversations about them. And they've come here twice. The day that I left for the return and the day I came back from the return. And both times they just kind of like picked apart everything they saw wrong with this church, and it made it like really devalued me. And so just like even, I guess like even if there's something that you don't agree on with your kid, but like they love it, even you like you may not like it. If it's bad, obviously don't do this, but like just tell them that you're proud of them and you see the change in them, because like my parents have not, like the only thing that they've talked about is like, yeah, we see a little bit of change in you, because like I used to not be such a great kid, but like I'm changing now, and they see that, and they haven't said like, oh, we're proud of you for coming to God, or we're proud of you for going to church. They've just been like, oh yeah, we see the change, and this is what we disagree with about your church. Like just support them.
Isn't relationship with a father amazing?
Yeah.
It'll change your heart for sure.
So did you guys get that? Kids want you to listen to them.
Yeah.
And if they think something's important, they need you to feel like it's important too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you for
know,
sharing,
it-
Jared. That's really good.
Go ahead, buddy.
I'm going to turn it around because
Got the pastor in the room. Here we go.
Hey, you have a grandpa in here. Grandpa, this is a safe place, right?
oh yeah,
'Kay.
I know. I just want to encourage all the dads that want to make a change for their kids, because my dad can get very angry at times very quickly, and like if he has a bad day at work, he can get really frustrated with us, not because we did anything wrong, just because he's dealing with dumb architects is what he says, and stuff like that. And growing up, it was really hard at first because like it just seemed like all the time he was angry. All the time he was angry, and the worst he did was yell. Like, don't get me wrong, he never hit any of us or anything like that, except for spankings, but I deserved them. But you know, but the more God came into my dad's life, the more it's gone away. And the more that I see that, the more I want to follow God. And especially after the return and seeing how huge that affected my dad. Like, he comes home and he's just controls himself a lot more now. And, like, he still has his days, and we're not perfect, so I can't blame him. And it's just cool to see the relationship that I've gained from him, because I used to just kind of want to stay away from him because he's always angry. He's going to yell at me for something I didn't really do wrong. But now it's to the point where I can actually come to him and talk to him about some serious things that I've struggled with, and just be able to have a real relationship with my dad. So I just encourage you to keep pressing if you've messed up.
That's awesome. You know, I just want to follow up real quick with what he just said, because a real pivotal part of my life was on when I got back from Camp Freedom. I didn't know how to be. I loved my kids. I loved them to death, but I didn't know how to be a loving father. And I'll say just what you said, is that you cannot give what you did not have. You can try your best to change it. I knew two things that I would never ever do. One, I would never ever hit my kids in the face. And two, I would never call my kids stupid. And that's something that will burn in you forever, and it just creates anger. And I had that for so many years of my life, and it wasn't until Camp Freedom that I finally experienced what true eternal love was from God. And it was then as when my children knew they had a different dad. You're right, we're not perfect. I'm still not perfect. My impatience gets the best of me at times, but I tell you what, when I screw up, just like you said, my kids have every bit of the, they can call me out. I'll just say, for instance, on their way to school the other morning, they were just back and forth at each other in the back seat on the way to school. I said, guys, please, just shut up. And of course, my youngest, Caleb, Dad, you said never to say shut up to us. And I said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said shut up, but would you please stop? You're driving me nuts. But we're never gonna be perfect. And as long as we're always striving to be what God's designed us to be as a father, as long as we're treating his children the way he treats us, if you carry that into your relationships with your wives and to treat your children the way God showed you, man, I wish I was where you three are back when I was 16 through 18, because I think every one of us in this room would be different. But
I wanted to highlight one thing he said that I think we all need to hear, is that there was a connection point you could hear. My dad's harshness kept me away from wanting God. And if you didn't hear that in a story, that's what I caught.
Yeah.
So dads, when you're harsh to your kids, impatient or whatever like that, it has a direct effect on how we see God and how we want to be close to him. And so just catch that how we're treating our kids really does impact that. It really does, even in good homes. So
I think the other thing I want to add to that is be intentional. When you punch out from work, start making that transition. You know, I'm going home. I'm going into father mode. I'm not with my buddies. I'm not with the guy that pissed me off. I'm going home, and I need to take on a heart of loving. You know, if you need to drive around the block one more time, it would be worth it.
Amen.
One of the biggest things that I think we all struggle with in our own specific household, and even my siblings that have already moved out, all of us with our relationships with my dad specifically, I think we all don't spend enough time with my dad, and the older that I get, the more that I see that I truly do need that. I'm the youngest out of 5, the second to the youngest. He's 10 years older than me. I'm not going to go into much details, but long story short, his mom is different than my mom. They split apart, and so there was different households there. And he didn't like that my dad was, he wouldn't put up with any of my brother's crap, and he knew that if he moved over with his mom, he can get away with smoking, cigarettes, weed, drinking, sex, you name it. He could get away with all that. And the older that he gets, he's now seeing that it really did damage him. And I'm seeing now that it really did affect him, well, their relationship, but it also is affecting my relationship with my dad, because he still has some of those same fears. It's like, oh, Sean's going to run away now. He's going to go live with someone else, even though that I've been with him through my whole entire 18 years. And another big thing is like being vulnerable. We want to know your guys' struggles, your big wins, your big losses, not so we can make fun of you guys, but so we can get 10 steps ahead of what we were. This is the only reason why us 3 are here today, is so we can be 100 steps farther than what all the knuckleheads are there at school. Because whatever they're teaching us there, we're going to get nowhere. We're just going to keep on going around in circles. But here we're actually taking stuff and being able to use that to our lives. And so we want to know all of your struggles, your wins, your losses, so we can grow. And if you guys don't know some things, if you guys don't have all the tools to offer, we would rather us hear from you guys that, hey, we don't have those tools. I'm sorry, but I'm not a good person that you can come to with this. You'll have to go find this from another person who you can look up to. And hopefully they can lead you in a good direction, because right now, I have no idea. And it's okay to not know.
Yeah, I think it's important that, with you guys, is don't be afraid to ask your dad's questions. I mean, I don't know your parents I don't know your parents, but it sounds like you can talk to them a little bit. But Sean, and you guys your dads have been through or in this church long enough to know that if you come and ask them a legitimate question, they're going to go to the end of the earth to find that answer for you. I guarantee it. So, I know we got to close it, but I think it's important that we be vulnerable with our kids.
Yes.
Yeah, this is for some of you that might have an estranged relationship with your child, or that they're not saved, and you're looking to get that done. And as with most things, we tend to focus on the problem instead of on God. And when we're serving Him, and you're helping another child, God's making provision for your child, and their heart can change and come to you as well. So just focus on serving Him and helping whoever you can.
Awesome. Thank you, Velas. Thank you, everyone that had questions. That was good stuff. Thank you, Sean. Good wisdom there, too, for us. So, anyways, take some of that wisdom, guys, even from these young guys, when you're in your groups and stuff like that. Ask them how you can be a better dad, And so, with that, you guys are dismissed. Go to your small groups. Once again, show up early next week for the ministry night.